recently there's been a very vibrant discussion in the public domain about the lifestyle of inmates, specifically from inside the country's prisons. Correctional Services Commissioner Makgothi Thobakgale earlier this week conducted raids in prisons to search for contraband, amongst other things. This week, prison wardens and SAPS members carried out a raid specifically at the Johannesburg Prison, where we saw a whole host of items, including dagga, SIM cards, Wi-Fi routers, PlayStation consoles, and in some instances, plasma screens being seized. And so we decided to take a step back and bring in somebody who has spent some time behind bars and has been identified in some instances as a former kingpin in cash and transit heists, to share his own experience about serving a sentence of about 12 years within the country's correctional services facilities. His name is Trinity Msibi, and joins us now in our studios for his thoughts. And Trinity, thanks for popping by. I really do appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to your viewers and everybody else at home.
All right, so as I mentioned, I think there's been a lot being said about what was found in prisons, and it's raised a whole host of questions. But maybe let's just begin at the start for you. Most, if not everybody, has a story about how they ended up also being counted among prisoners in the country. Yeah. What happened in your case? Okay,
perhaps as a gambit, I would first say I apologize sincerely to whoever that I might have offended in my previous life, with these crime activities and everything like that. So my sincere apologies. And to the people that are still affected by crime now and experiencing it. And then what led to me committing crime is that, where we grew up, the environment wasn't conducive for an upbringing of a child, to actually be, aspirant of greater things, the things that would actually be, things that inspire you would be amaginsa and all of that. And then you would actually see that as something that would actually take you to where you want to be, You would see a doctor, but, rarely you would see a lawyer or a teacher at school, but you wouldn't actually, think you want to go that route. It seemingly took longer than criminal activities did. With the criminal activities, you would actually look up to these people, you see them flourish, in a shorter space of time. And on the other hand, you are oppressed by your poverty and everything like that. Take, for instance, myself. I started living alone in the house at the age of 8. You can imagine, without parents, without anybody. And obviously the family spectrum as well is not, intact. You don't have a father, the mother is not present in a sense that a mother should be. And the family is disorientated. Somebody is doing this, the other is doing that. You don't have inspiration from here. You don't have a support structure from here. What more when you go outside?
Sure, absolutely. We do find in many instances the environment in which people who find themselves on the wrong side of the law is a huge contributing factor to how things pan out for them.
Absolutely. Upbringing first in the home space, and then it broadens obviously to the surroundings, You take, for instance, in the apartheid days, the white people, where they were confined, in the suburban areas, the influence there was for them to aspire greater things. Today, who are the people who are leading in key points of where money is and everything like that? Because they were influenced and channeled and brought up like that, you understand? Now in the townships, you find people like me who have to start on the wrong path before they recollect their thoughts and come back to doing, exactly what they should have done when they were young. Because the inspiration wasn't there at the time. But now when you are confined, perhaps in prison, and you start, using your mind and cogitating about whatever might have happened, like in the past in your life, and then trying to redress all of that, and this is when you start thinking positively and constructively.
Sure, absolutely. As I mentioned, you were sentenced for 12 years. How much of that time did you spend behind bars?
No. I wasn't sentenced for 12 years. I was sentenced for 62 years.
Okay.
3 years later, it was appealed and then reduced to 18 years. And then I had broken parole, which means I was an offender. I had reoffended in a sense. So it meant that they added whatever years I was still supposed to be serving as a parolee. They added that to the 18 years, and then combined, it actually cost me to stay 12 years, 8 months in prison.
I see. All right.
So I was incarcerated for 12 years, 8 months.
That's not a short space of time,
Mom,
you know?
and like you lose on everything. When you get out here, things have changed.
Sure.
You know, the ambience, how people do things and view things. It's not like you would expect. Unless, of course, if you are in prison, you are not chained in the head. You are only chained bodily, you know, then you would start, you know, to also explore, you know, what people do, what is new on the outside, so that when you go there, you reintegrate in a sense that, you know, would actually align with
Yeah.
what people are currently doing.
And we'll speak a bit, a bit more about what that reintegration process looks like. But, we're speaking to you off of the back of that raid, and I'm sure you must have heard about it, seen it also on social media if you're active. Police pouncing on officials at the Johannesburg Prison, Sun City is what it's commonly referred to. I wonder what goes through your mind when you see some of those items seized, because part of the conversation in the public domain is just how stunned people are about how much people can get into correctional services facilities.
Absolutely. And what I've actually heard people say, which obviously created a furore in a sense, it's that they had said this is luxury, or there's, I don't know, the life there is lavish, and because of these gadgets that they see. But in essence, a cellular phone can never be a luxury, you know. Your television is not a luxury. Whatever gadgets that you saw there, they can never be a luxury. What I interpreted them as when I was in prison using a cell phone, I thought of it as a gadget that will allow me to access information. Obviously aligned with what is enshrined in our constitution, that everybody, without restriction, has the right to access information, even if it is held by the state. So you can utilize it for meetings with family, you can utilize it for school, you can utilize it to, you know, source information or do research, you understand? And then a few people that would use the cell phone to actually do whatever things that are unbecoming. And then now it becomes, you know, a halabaloo about, hey, prisoners, lavish lifestyle, and that. In a way, one would say the raids are actually okay, and they are supposed to be done as prison protocol requires. I agree with that. But whatever happens during those raids, nobody knows. The abuse that those people suffer, because you know, rights are being violated when these things happen. Contraband is wrong in prison. No one advocates for that. You understand? But as we have seen, you know, on a broader scale, that corruption has marred almost every facility that we have, you know. And it can be kept. People like me who have been in prison, who know how to, you know, keep these things. In our country, they are not used. We are not utilized to say, because these people know these things and they have reformed, how can they help us keep this thing? We are not used.
That's interesting.
You understand?
Yeah, let me come in there. It's interesting that you mentioned that, you know, you don't see these items as being luxurious. And you're right. A lot of the people who have been commenting have been saying, how do we square, on the one hand, people who violated the law, some instances have altered people's lives, being able to enjoy, let's face it, items and access that people who are outside of the prison system, in some instances, cannot afford.
Okay.
Help us square what people are struggling to reconcile in their own minds. And I suspect that's where the discomfort, the anger, the questions are coming from.
Yeah, because, you know, the mentality is that, or should I say the perspective or perception is that people in prison should be punished.
Correct.
But the law doesn't require punishment for someone who has offended the society. It actually requires reform. You know, train up this person because perhaps they never received a good training up. Let us do it in a way that rehabilitates them, changes them so that they are reintegrated back into the society so that they do good, you know, again. So if you were to say to somebody who's crying foul about those gadgets and them being a lavish lifestyle or luxuries, you tell them, swap with one inmate, you know, for one day, 24 hours, and I give you everything that you would want. You know, your television, your radio, you know, I'll give you that, and just stay there for one day. the impacts, the mental impacts, they must be there as well. The stresses that you go through as an inmate, they must be there. The lack and limited rights, they must be. All of those things compressed into one, just for 24 hours. I don't think anybody can stand that. And we go through that for 24 hours each and every day, 365 days in a year, times that by 12. On my case.
Right. And again, some people might suggest that's what justice calls for, right? You've been hopefully through a fair trial, and this is the outcome of that process. But I think your point is well made. You mentioned something else which I was hoping to visit again, which is this idea that these gadgets are used innocently, you know? And in fact, the commissioner said it the same when I interviewed him yesterday. You know, he spoke about this being a window, if you like, into the world, so that hopefully, once you are rehabilitated, you can continue being a functional member of society. Yeah. But in your experience, in the 12 years you spent, are you finding that that's what those gadgets are actually used for?
Yeah, if we look at this, you see the people who use these gadgets wrongly, like I said, it's only a few people. The crowd in prison is too much people. It's about 150 or so prisoners, so plus minus that in South Africa. I'm talking about convicted and sentenced, even they're awaiting trial. So how many people have been seen doing wrong or have been caught doing wrong with these gadgets? You know, everybody else is using them for the right reasons. And they are actually helping. Like myself, I've never went to school when I was in jail, because I didn't have money to go to school, because school is not free, you know, especially your education, your higher learning. It's not free. You have to pay for your other studies. Okay, your grade 1 to matric, it's for free, but the other parts are not for free, you understand? So you can access that kind of education on a cellular phone, on the internet. You can do that. You can listen to the radio and actually gather information as much as you can, you understand? And then you are able to take part in the outside world and, you know, also contend in the field as much as anybody else who has been educated or trained up in an education facility has. You understand?
Sure.
Yes.
All right. And to be clear, by the way, we're having this conversation about cell phones, but, you know, the law doesn't allow cell phones to be inside prisons, right?
Absolutely.
I just want to make that very clear. Yeah. This is in no way endorsing, but it's important for us to understand at the very least the motive behind what we saw take place this week. Speaking of that, there have been questions around how people are able to get the stuff inside. What has your experience taught you? Okay,
we all know that at the end of the day, everybody else, a jailer, a jailed person, and everyone else, even you, we are all human beings. At some point, our emotions, they kick in. We sympathize, we empathize with people whom we work with, you know. Say, for instance, somebody you work with here doesn't have, you know, shoes or anything of that sort, or they can't afford a certain thing because of their debts and stuff. You would want to come in and assist, you know. So also, we must not forget that corruption is everywhere, as I articulated earlier, that corruption is everywhere. And with that in mind, and the sympathy that goes with it, the empathy that goes with it, obviously you will have, you know, somebody you can actually, you know, try and hook in.
Like so a warden, for example.
You know, that type of thing, a prison warden. Sometimes you get people who get out of the prison, they go and work at the servants' quarters where the other, you know, wardens stay, the prison wardens stay. Then those people, perhaps when they go there, they get these gadgets or they steal them or whatever the case might be, they come back with that. But mostly it would be an exchange between a prison warder and an inmate.
Fair enough.
You know. Yeah.
Sure. All right. I think a lot of people are hoping the outcome of any kind of incarceration is for someone to be able to reflect on what they've done.
Absolutely.
And turn the tide. And I think from where I'm sitting, it seems you've been able to do that quite effectively. Absolutely. And I wonder what you put that down to, you know, because hopefully we're able to replicate an experience like yours, not the committing of the crime part, obviously, but the, as I mentioned, thinking it through and understanding where you've erred so that you can contribute positively to society, which is what you're doing now through your foundation. But the question really is, what do you reckon for you made the difference?
Okay, firstly, it would be that I'm a godly man, so I attach everything else to say it was me telling myself that for me to actually be reformed, I actually need a source of strength, a pillar, to actually lean on. And then for me, it was Christianity. As a Seventh-day Adventist, you'll be like a bookworm when it comes to doctrine of the church and everything like that. So that played a pivotal role, even in exploring other avenues of knowledge and stuff, because it started with the Bible. Bible will speak of the constellations and the galaxies and and then you want to explore the subject. The Bible will speak about Egypt, you want to explore Egypt. The Bible will speak about, you would want to find out where was Sinai in the map and You actually go to every other subject under the sun, just because you started by studying a Bible. So for me, it was me taking up God and saying, now, I want to be a reformed man. First, it has to start within, and then the outer fruits will show, obviously. But if I was going to say I'm going to change my life, I want to do better without any source that would actually ignite that type of mentality or strength, I would have gotten back by now to doing crime,
Wow. As I mentioned, you do a foundation, or you have a foundation. Very quickly, tell us about the work you do.
Okay, recently we went to a home for the mentally handicapped children. I managed to raise some money through social media, and then I went there, bought these children, like 5 blankets and sanitary towels. And I also bought 3 buckets of Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I don't eat meat, by the way. So I just went and had lunch with these people, and then I played with these children and everything like that. But my heart has always been, closer to people who are, lacking and stuff like that, because I know how it is, to actually not have,
Absolutely.
So yeah. And then I also do visit homes, Thobakgale, and then I go to other places, even schools. I also do this voluntary work in schools. I speak to children in schools, try to warn them about the dangers of crime. Also telling them about the ramifications that befell me, from experience. At least when they hear it from somebody who has experienced it, it is much better, you understand? Yeah.
Without a doubt. And hopefully this conversation is also able to touch a few people who are able to see things differently now. Trinity Msibi, what a story. Thank you for popping by and sharing it with us.
No, thank you so much.
We appreciate it indeed. You can exhale because I know a lot has been said in the public domain, and I imagine rested much on your shoulders. Trinity Msibi, now doing a lot of humanitarian work, but has spent a considerable amount of time in the country's correctional services system, and was just reflecting for us around what actually takes place behind some of those bars.